Funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this special edition of Fronteras, a changing America, building a 21st century workforce. The Bridge of Southern New Mexico coordinated the series, and you'll find a lot more information at newmexicotruetalent.org. Today's focus, the aerospace industry. A Mayfield High School graduate is fulfilling her passion of being a welder at NASA's White Sands Test Facility. Michael Hernandez reports.
Sparks fly as 23-year-old Abby Seward uses a welding torch to perform what's called a stick weld on a rectangular plate of carbon steel. Seward is a junior mechanical welder at the NASA White Sands Test Facility located northeast of Las Cruces as part of the Johnson Space Center in Houston. She says she took a career and technical education course in welding her senior year at Mayfield High School, which quickly became her favorite class. But after graduating in 2013, Seward says she had a tough time deciding which career path to follow during her freshman year at New Mexico State University.
I was 18, I was just excited to buy a lotto ticket. Like, how am I supposed to decide what I need to do for the rest of my life? So I decided to transfer to DACC, the community college. I enrolled in the welding technology program, and I was doing it more space holder till I figured out what career path I wanted. Well, I graduated with a welding technology degree in 2015, and I started out at NASA White Sands Test Facility less than a year later.
Seward is one of more than 600 employees working at NASA's test facility. Since 1963, the site has played a key role in aerospace operations, including testing rocket engines for NASA, the Department of Defense, and private firms. Seward works in the site's precision machining and fabrication facility for Engineering Research and Consulting Incorporated, one of 5 companies at the site doing test contracting work for NASA. President and CEO Ernie Wu says non-traditional employees like Abby continue the company's goal of pushing boundaries.
It's about NASA as well. What's possible for humanity to travel to other planets, to other parts of the solar system, to other parts of space. And it's that ability to dream. Somebody like Abby brings that imagination, that drive, that ambition to do something that other people don't think is possible.
While efforts have increased to diversify the mechanical and aerospace engineering field, there's a wide gender gap in Seward's industry. Just 4.5% of welding, soldering, and brazing workers in the U.S. are women, according to 2017 data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But the Bureau also projects employment in welding and similar occupations will grow 6% between 2016 and 2026. That's encouraging news, as the American Welding Society has predicted a shortage of 400,000 welding operators by 2024. Filling that workforce gap means growing and training workers with hands-on skills. Adam Irian is Facilities Director and Deputy General Manager for Jacobs Engineering Group Incorporated, a principal contractor at the site. Irian says aerospace employers look for candidates with experience that sets them apart.
You want to try and hire the best person possible with the exact skill set that you want, and you don't always get the exact skill set. But when you see something like the CTE, that separates, that's a separator, and that's what we're looking for. And the experience is huge too. When you see an individual who's actually had like a summer job and worked in the summers and goes to school and they're hands-on, again it leads to they've got a work ethic, and that's huge as well.
While southern New Mexico is home to a substantial aerospace industry, many in the region don't know what takes place at the federal facility. Irian says the level of testing the site performs makes it a unique workspace.
From the hypervelocity testing, where you shoot a particle at a very high rate of speed to see what it's going to do on impact, to something that's actually in orbit, to testing an engine, a one-of-a-kind engine, or helping with the Missile Defense Agency, or the Japanese Space Agency, or commercial providers. We do so many different things out here, from chemistry labs to machine shops to welding to clean rooms to, we have HVAC technicians. It's like a little city.
Seward says she thinks it's, quote, pretty rad to know her work as a welder is helping to advance space travel.
The path to Mars is through NASA White Sands Test Facility, and that's just something we say around here, and it's true. It's true. I build piping systems, I do test stands so we can bring in more work. Just the work I do for NASA itself as well as our other contractors is awesome. It's very exciting, it's thrilling, and just to know that what I'm contributing is being utilized and is just going to change the way we see our future.
Along with work, Seward is pursuing another associate's degree at Doñana Community College in business management. She says other students interested in technical careers should take a mix of classes to find what they like best. For her, that's bonding metal.
I just love to weld. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't tried it, I think you should. Just kind of experience it. It's just very soothing. It's kind of a meditation when you have your hood down and you're just laying beads. It's pretty rad. But working out here is just a lot of the fun projects. The people are awesome, the environment's good, and it's a great place to work. I feel I got really lucky starting out, and this is my first job. That's awesome.
As Seward works to build on her skills in and out of the workshop, the projected need for welders may make her career prospects white hot. For KRWG Public Media, I'm Michael Hernandez.
Some examples of building the workforce in our community. We continue our discussion with Joe Bullington of Jacobs Technologies, Dan Hicks of Spaceport America, and Jason Lazich of Virgin Galactic. Our panel was coordinated by the Bridge of Southern New Mexico. More information is online at newmexicotruetalent.org. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you, Fred.
Joe, I want to start with you today, and I want to talk about the role of White Sands Test Facility. We saw a little report there in fulfilling NASA's mission.
Okay, well, as we saw in the field report, there's a number of different test facilities and support capabilities there at the NASA White Sands Test Facility, which is right here in Las Cruces, of course. We do testing for a lot of NASA's mission, and also for some of the contractors that support NASA or have their own missions. So for instance, right now we're doing rocket engine testing in our special rocket engine test cells on the NASA Orion crew vehicle. It has its own booster rockets that's on the vehicle. And right next door to that, we're doing testing for the Boeing crew vehicle, the Starliner, which also has similar rocket engines on it. And that's being developed under the NASA Commercial Crew Program. So although one is directly NASA and one is a contractor, they're both really for NASA programs. So those are a couple of major examples that we're doing right now. But we've done a lot of work for many other NASA programs. We've got a legacy of much involvement with the Space Shuttle program. We did rocket engine testing and rocket engine refurbishment all through the shuttle program. We've done work for a number of things, including making flight hardware for the International Space Station and many other NASA programs and projects that we've supported.
So a lot to do with NASA. Folks may also be wondering about the connections between White Sands and Spaceport America. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So, we've been watching with interest as Spaceport America, and where Dan is the head, has been developing over a decade or more now with great interest. It's of course a great thing for the community, but it's also a good thing for NASA and for the NASA White Sands Test Facility, because having that capability here in our areas will provide for good collaboration between our facilities and our groups. But even directly, both Spaceport America and currently the anchor tenant Virgin Galactic will be launching NASA experiments and other things that NASA needs to get into space. There are just not enough ways to get things into space right now with just the NASA vehicles. So we need more and more commercially developed systems to get things, experiments and other items into space.
Okay, so Dan, let's talk about your thoughts on this and of course the activities that are underway at Spaceport America.
Well, Fred, first of all, thank you so much for having me on for this panel on talent and workforce development. I tell you, I'm living the dream out there. It's been a couple years since I retired from White Sands Missile Range, and then listening to Joe talk, one of our partners, and being in this position at Spaceport America with where the space industry is going is so exciting because conditions have changed just within this last year that we can get to a little bit later. But what's happening out at Spaceport America right now is we've done a number of suborbital launches just this year. Up Aerospace is back flying, doing some experiments for NASA and other customers. Exos, another suborbital provider, is doing some experimentation. They just started flying again. Both of these companies were out for a few years under development, but now they're back flying and supporting NASA's Flight Opportunities Program there at Spaceport America. On top of that, we've got a number of universities from around the world that are doing testing and kind of some research, but also just some competition like Spaceport America Cup that we just completed the third week of June. It's our second cup. We're getting ready for the next cup coming up the third week in June of 2019. It's such a great competition. You have the future workforce of the space industry coming to beautiful southern New Mexico to compete in this rocket competition.
So speaking of the workforce, let's talk about jobs being filled at the spaceport and then jobs that you see down the line.
So right now, actually, I got some approval this last legislative session to increase my state staff. So I've growing to about 26 state personnel. There's some aerospace engineers we're looking for. There's also some maintenance technicians that we're looking for. There's even a business specialist, kind of a marketing type of individual, and even a legal assistant that we're looking for at Spaceport America. The neat thing about Spaceport America is it's like a little city in the middle of the desert that we're operating and that we're supporting. So it's neat listening to the field report of seeing Ms. Seward and what she's doing in welding, because as we grow the space industry in New Mexico, but primarily at Spaceport America, when we continue to grow these customer base coming in, there'll be a complete suite of educational backgrounds that we need. Everything from the technical fields of plumbing, electricians, of welders, to some of the soft skills of more like marketing and getting out in public and communications, historical documentation, to some of the STEM fields of the science, mathematics, engineering that we're going to need a complete suite. When you look at some of the construction projects that we have on our plate, hopefully coming up with a successful legislation session of our capital outlay projects, the construction projects are things like a payload processing facility. And so things that get to support not just the suborbital work, which we're continuing to have great success with, but as we go into low Earth orbit with the right technologies of single stage to orbit, returnable boosters, or spaceplane technologies, being able to put payloads up into orbit is what is so exciting, and not just in New Mexico, but the industry around the world.
Yeah, so really a potential for a lot of fields, and we heard that in the field report at White Sands as well, that there's a lot of support staff as a facility grows. Of course, your anchor tenant is Virgin Galactic, and if folks are just joining us, Jason, you're from Virgin Galactic. Give us an update as the anchor tenant of Spaceport America on where Virgin is right now and your hopes for the future.
Well, thank you, Fred. It's a very exciting time here for Virgin Galactic. News very recently, as of last week, we went to space. We actually flew our spaceship above 50 miles above the Earth, topped out at Mach 2.9. And we have 2 new astronauts in the U.S. After they return.
Yeah,
so
and of course,
very exciting.
We're taping this in December. A lot of folks will see that and remember that. It was an international story, testing in Mojave. I understand there will have to be a test like that at Spaceport America, of course, before there are actual flights, tourism flights.
That's correct. So currently our testing is going on at the Mojave Airport and Test Facility, but as we move into the commercial operation, that will come down to New Mexico and ultimately be at Spaceport America.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things that I've seen in press reports of this, even the test that occurred in December at Mojave, is that was just a test, but there was other work involved, that you had materials going up into space for clients, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As Dan had mentioned and Joe had, the Futures program at NASA is a big part of our background and also supporting that program going forward. And I know, Dan, if you want to speak to that a little bit more, Joe?
Yes, as a part of the research community, in fact, at the national level, Vice President Pence is the National Space Council, and we just started a panel for microgravity research. And so what Virgin brings is a game changer in the industry of doing experimentation with the microgravity environment of about 3 to 4 to 5 minutes, which really doesn't exist today. That'll be a game changer for the research and the industry that needs experimentation in microgravity. That'll happen here at Spaceport America, but what that brings is researchers that'll come utilize a facility like the payload processing facility that we'll be constructing, but they'll come and they'll conduct an experiment for a couple weeks at a time. They'll go up on Virgin's capability that'll take it up. They can go up on other capabilities in the suborbital world. But that's so unique, and that's a game changer that we're going to see here in southern New Mexico.
Sure, another possibility.
That's right. I was going to say, you know, right now there's a lot of historical events that are happening. The one that Sir Richard Branson did with the flight Virgin Galactic out of Mojave last week, first time a commercial entity took humans up into space. Prior to that, it was all government entities around the world for decades, right? There's very few astronauts that are in space now. The FAA was there, and they invited these 2 new astronauts to come back and get their wings in a formal ceremony sometime in early January of 2019.
How neat.
That's so historical.
So Jason, folks saw that test in Mojave, in California. I understand a contingent of employees who are in California will eventually be making their way to Spaceport America. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So currently we actually have 45 teammates located in Las Cruces and in New Mexico area. And as we're looking to grow through our process, the test process, which still will happen in Mojave, parallel with that, we are prepping for the commercial operations to start down here at Spaceport America once our testing is finished. At that point in time, we're looking at having upwards of 100 employees and teammates that will either relocate from that area or we'll be very fortunate to hire locally down here in the Las Cruces area for those positions.
Okay, very interesting. Well, as Virgin Galactic begins operations, as your work in terms of work for NASA continues, one of the things that we're talking about in this series as a real focus is that strong workforce talent pipeline. Let's talk about that a bit, Joe.
Okay, well, of course, for any industry, but particularly for the aerospace industry and space flight, the workforce is just critical. That's what makes us go. We can't do it without a well-educated, trained, motivated workforce. We're fortunate to have New Mexico State University and other universities in this region that we draw heavily on for engineers and scientists. Also, Doñana Community College that we draw on for technicians and other skills. But they're absolutely critical to the programs and the projects that we have to do. We've got to have those folks. We have a lot of people now. We've been growing slightly over the last few years, continuing to grow. Of course, we have the normal people retiring and so forth, and you may have heard from other people that in our industry and others, there's a lot of people retiring these days. So we need a lot of fresh new folks coming in from the universities and the community colleges to keep our workforce strong.
This is a really big question, Joe, but it does relate to the workforce, and so I want to give you a chance to at least touch on it. Give us a sense of how, in your view, innovation and entrepreneurship advance the exploration of space.
Well, again, that's very critical to our whole country and the world, for that matter, advancing in space. People talk about things, we don't even know what problems we going to have to solve yet. We know we're going to have all kinds of problems and challenges, things that need to be done. So we need people that have good training and education, but also have that innovation spirit, and that talent can be developed, and there are programs to do that too. And to be able to innovate and find those new solutions and come up with those ideas, it takes a well-educated, motivated, and diverse workforce to do that, because we need lots of different perspectives and opinions to come up with those new ideas.
Okay, Dan, we've heard a bit from Joe. We heard a bit in the field reports as well that we heard at the top of the show. Give us a sense from your perspective as someone who has worked at White Sands, now working at Spaceport America. about the kinds of skills, the credentials, and even degrees that are really needed to ensure that as this industry grows, we have the workforce for it.
So let me cover a couple perspectives on that. One is when you're operating a city like in the middle of the desert, like Spaceport America is, in a kind of a remote area, which is needed because we're doing things that are launching big rockets up into space, right? Ultimately, that's our goal, to be able to do that. So there's certain jobs and skill sets that require everything from security to firefighters to paramedics, having that on-call staff around the clock, which we have out there, to dealing with some of the trades that I talked about earlier when we'd go through construction or just maintenance, having welders, plumbers, electricians. All of those will be talents that we need out at the spaceport. And then moving into more of the degreed areas, but it's not just STEM, it's not just scientists and mathematicians, it's dealing with historians, with financials, with business majors. You know, a lot of our partners are looking at people that have a master's in business just to be able to help us do project management. And particularly the companies that are coming to us right now, we have about 21 different companies that were in discussions with us that want to bring capabilities and technology to Spaceport America. And so they're looking for skill sets across the board too. Do they have good people that can communicate well, that can be their public relations specialist, for example? Do they have good engineers that have those communication skills that can help them, understand how to get the technology in place? The thing about innovation that you talked, I want to talk about too, because that's kind of things we know about today. We know launch operators are going to come, we know payloads are going to come, but the thing that excites me about where we're at in history with the space industry is today we have about 1,500 satellites circling the globe. About half of them are probably U.S. owned. In a couple years, the projection is 50,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. And so the applications that are going to be written to that, talking about the innovation question, what type of skill sets, students that are good at writing quick apps for, whether it's an online application or whether it's something that could look at a sensor up on space and be able to help us, whether it's crop growth or whether it's ice melt or whether it's just looking at various traffic congestion. Every day you and I touch a space asset 36 times a day. In the future, with all those other platforms up there providing capabilities, the real innovative spirits is going to be these young minds that are able to look at, hey, I'm going to do a quick app and I'm going to be able to, there's a platform up there I can go to, and that'll help us do some type of activity that you and I can't even think of today.
Fascinating
So
stuff.
that's what's so exciting about the future workforce coming. There's so many different potentials of jobs, not just at the spaceport directly, but the surrounding communities that'll come then support the spaceport in command and control nodes or applications. They may want to have an office here in town, but they're developing applications that'll go on a satellite that's taken off up into space.
Okay. Jason, give me a sense of your educational partners at Virgin in building your workforce, because as you mentioned, you have a workforce now here in Las Cruces, but it's going to continue to grow through transfers from California and some hires as well.
That is correct. So we have a very diverse workforce here in New Mexico, and I think one of the most unique opportunities that we have for Virgin Galactic is very similar to Joe and to Dan. We will need those same types of disciplines on the technical side, but also we're adding the tourism side to the spaceflight opportunity. And with our future astronauts, we're going to be adding a hospitality group to this program. And as we look at going to space, it's very exciting, very, very exciting. And the next step is to do it the Virgin way, to put the Virgin flair to it.
Now, when you say a tourism side of this, are you talking about people who would pay to go up into space, that in particular, or is it more than that?
It's more than that. It's definitely the crux is that the individual going into space, but the fact that those individuals, their families, their friends are going to be spending time here locally in the Las Cruces area and in New Mexico. And during that time, we were going to have opportunities to visit local areas, the White Sands, just whatever those folks would enjoy doing. And it's about the experience. They're coming here to experience space travel, but just not to forget that it's going to happen and to prepare our future astronauts for it. And what a better place to do it than at a Las Cruces.
Absolutely. Joe, we're quickly running out of time, but something I wanted to touch on that we heard about very briefly in the field report at the top of the show is that while a lot of the education is dealing with specific skills, workforce skills, math and science and technology, the so-called soft skills are important too, coming to work on time, having a work ethic, etc. Give us a sense, as someone who's a business executive, of the importance of this and the work that needs to be done in this area, even beyond the things we talk about in this series.
Okay, thank you. As you said, certainly the STEM skills are very important. That's the basic foundation people have to come to work out there. But they also, we talked about innovation. They need to be able to innovate, but they need to be able to communicate those ideas. They've got to communicate them to their peers, team members, to their leaders, and to the public in many cases. And as you said, the other skills, they need to be able to, in our case, we have all this testing we have to do on schedule, so people have to be there on time, be ready to work, and be productive when they work. So all those skills are definitely important. As you call them, the soft skills as well as the hard STEM skills.
I liked in the field report that the gentleman referenced having employees who are young who've already had some kind of employment. That often helps, I think. As someone who has been a manager for a couple decades, I know that for sure. Joe, Dan, Jason, thank you all for being here. It's very interesting stuff. Wish we had more time, but this was a good start to the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks as well to all of you at home for joining us for this Fronteras special, Building a 21st Century Workforce. There is a lot more information online. Check out the Bridge of Southern New Mexico at newmexicotruetalent.org. Have a great week.
Funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you. Thank you.